Hi everyone. So in this presentation, we're going to go a general overview of psychological disorders, some of the ones that aren't discussed in such great detail within your text. And so this is all on page 506. So first thing we're going to talk about, the DSM is broken down into categories. And in your text, we're going to focus on the psychological disorders from 6 of the categories. But first, we're actually going to briefly discuss a few other categories and some of those common disorders that you'll find in those. Now, for a full list of all the categories, if you go to the full notes that I typed up, there is actually a hyperlink in there that will bring you right to the DSM-5 table of contents, and then you can view all of the disorders from there. So we're going to start by talking about neurodevelopmental disorders. And we've already talked about autism spectrum disorder in our chapter on development. But the new one we're going to talk about here is Tourette's. So Tourette's disorder usually has an onset prior to the age of 18, and it's characterized by things like motor tics. It could be recurring spasmodic movements of the head or the arms. It could be vocal tics, such as recurring or sudden clicking, grunting, or snorting sounds. And sometimes it does involve uncontrollable utterances of profane or obscene words, or sometimes they will shout those words out. The key thing to remember is that this person is not in control of any of this and can't stop doing these things. So now we're going to move on to the substance-related and addictive disorders. And of course, with substance use disorder, it's recurrent substance use that involves impaired control, disruption of social, occupational, and interpersonal functioning, and the development of craving, tolerance, and withdrawal symptoms. So with tolerance, anyone who has a substance use issue, they will need more and more of the substance to get the same feeling that they used to get from a small amount. So for example, if you had a person who used to be able to, would drink 2 servings of alcohol and would have a certain feeling, maybe now they have to drink 3 or 4 or 5 to get that same feeling. And it also involves withdrawal symptoms. They will actually physically have withdrawal symptoms and feel ill if they don't receive whatever that drug is. In this same category is gambling disorder, and it's persistent gambling that disrupts personal, family, and/or vocational pursuits. So now we'll move on to the somatic symptoms and related disorders. And so these involve bodily complaints. So it's things somatic complaints. And somatic symptom disorder is actually characterized by excessive worry or distress that's completely out of proportion to the seriousness of the physical symptoms that are present. So they could have something very small going on and they blow it out of proportion. That's some big thing and they get very concerned about it and they get themselves kind of anxious and worked up about something minor. And it leads to a disruption of their lives because of this. There's also illness anxiety disorder, which is excessive preoccupation with one's own health and worry about illnesses despite the absence of serious physical symptoms. So this could be someone who, maybe lets out one little cough and goes, oh, I think I'm dying. I have, may have lung cancer. And they start panicking about things that they really don't need to, or they get really preoccupied with their own health to the point where their preoccupation with their health disrupts normal daily living. Disruptive impulsive control and conduct disorders. So these are things like kleptomania. If you don't know what that is, they have impulses to steal things. They don't necessarily need the items. It might not be for personal use or maybe because they have monetary value. They just have a need to steal things. And it disrupts their life because that becomes their obsession. They have to steal things. And then, of course, there's pyromania. And these are people who will set things on fire. And they get some sort of pleasure, gratification, or relief from tension by setting things on fire. So when we get to our next section, we're actually going to start by talking about anxiety disorders, and then we'll also talk about post-traumatic stress disorder and obsessive compulsive disorder.